Hello everyone, I'm René Schlatter alongside Andrew Wright, winemaker at Merryvale Vineyards. Today we're going to taste some Napa Cab, specifically some Merryvale Cabs from 2013, 14 and 15 out of magnums. So as you guys all know that Cab is king in Napa Valley, but why is Napa Valley consistently producing some of the best Cabs in the world alongside Bordeaux and Tuscany? So Andrew, you want to chime in a little bit on that?
Sure, I'd love to, René. So Cabernet Sauvignon, of course, is parent grapes being Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc in Bordeaux. In California, it really presents itself as this grape that can kind of do a lot of different things. The climate here is a little bit more generous, as we could say. In Napa Valley specifically, we have half the known soil types in the world, plus all these different microclimates ranging from the base of the Napa Valley, the San Pablo Bay, Carneros, all the way up to the top of Calistoga. And then both sides of the valley, the western side of the valley being old seabed and the eastern side being an old volcanic range. So we have all these different soil types, microclimates. A thick-skinned grape varietal like Cabernet Sauvignon really flourishes in those climates and really allows the varietal to express itself in different ways up and down the valley.
Excellent. Well, without further ado, I think we should start with maybe the older vintage, 2013. And by the way, magnums are great for ageability.
Sure.
I definitely would recommend decanting those before you drink them. Probably the sooner, the better in a way, which means that if you're going to have them at, let's say, 7 p.m., you can easily open those a few hours before because they're still relatively young. It's a little bit of a misconception that the older the vintage, the longer you should open the bottle of wine before you have it. It's rather the opposite. The younger vintages require more air, and as a result, those being in magnum, they age longer, and you can talk a little bit about that as to why that is. But 13, 14, 15, 5 to 7 years old can certainly be opened a couple hours before. You don't have to, but I think it will benefit the wines.
It's totally going to benefit. It's a great point, René, about the ageability of the magnums. If we look at a magnum is 1.5 liters compared to a normal bottle being 750 milliliters, so it's double the size. But if we look at the bottle, the actual neck of a magnum is the same as the neck of a 750 milliliter, and so it's the same size cork that goes into both those bottles. Right. So you basically have double the volume in the bottle for the same size cork. So you have the same size surface area that's like being oxygen exchanged. So essentially what's happening is you're taking twice as long to age that volume of wine. So it's always a good idea for the younger wines to get into the magnums, decant a little bit earlier.
Sure.
Allow it almost double the time if you can.
Any young wines, I think, especially the big Napa Cabs, being decanted will benefit from that. So
totally. So these are great wines to drink and talk about. So let's get right into it.
Yeah.
These are what I like to call kind of like some of the great years in the last decade of Napa Valley vintages. The 13, 14, and 15 are some exquisite vintages. The drought kind of started at the end of 2012. Going into 2013, 2013 was a pretty even growing season, although it was hotter with less rainfall, being a drought year. Now, what that means in terms of the vine is maybe a little bit lower yield, but at the same time, you farm sustainably like we do organically with a stewardship idea kind of in mind, and so we're still looking at vine balance, and so what we're left with is just more concentrated fruit. We're not picking that fruit overripe or underripe. Still with the same consideration for longevity, tension, acidity, balance in the wine. But I think we can all agree that the 13 is a very concentrated wine. It's got broad shoulders.
Yep.
It's a little bit bigger, but at the same time, it's still elegant, and I think it's still a very pleasing wine.
Yeah, very balanced. I think that's what we pride ourselves in, making wines that are food friendly and balanced. But 13 is a big wine. Can still go many years. Very concentrated, very powerful. In terms of the style, as you said, Andrew, we like to pick ripe, but not overripe. Have the freshness, the tension. So you have power, elegance, finesse, as well as some oak that's pretty well integrated, I would say. And those wines are now 5 to 7 years old. But 13 is great, even though it's got some ways to go.
Yep.
The 14, let's try a little bit of the 14 here.
I love trying these two wines side by side. The 14, to me, I love the juxtaposition because the 14, although still a drought year, maybe a cooler growing season, a little bit longer.
Yep.
You're allowed to be more judicious in the vineyard, pick a little bit slower. At the same time, it lacks some of the concentration of the 13, but I think it's got a broader sort of palate elegance to it too.
Yep.
It's got a volume to it. It's drinkable beautifully
More approachable
right now. Yeah,
at
more
this
approachable.
point.
I think it's a great. It's a
Yeah,
great.
yeah. I
setup.
think despite the fact that it's a year younger, I think it's a little bit more approachable, a little softer. Great drinking wine right now.
I love the tannins. The integration is really, really nice.
Yeah.
It's a great food wine at the moment.
And the before we go into the 15, they're all predominantly Cabernet. I think from 85 to 100%. Actually, the 14 is 100% Cabernet. The 13 is 85 and some other Bordeaux varietals, and then the 15 is 95% Cabernet. If my memory serves me right, with a little bit of Malbec. 2015 was also a year that was quite low yielding. I mean, generally speaking, we pick with naturally low yields on our estate vineyards. Also, the vineyards that we work with some growers. It's all about balance, just like in the wine.
For sure.
So, what works at 4 tons to the acre on a particular vineyard might be better at 3 tons at another one, or 5 at yet another vineyard. So it's all about location and the site, and really addressing to what you were saying earlier about the terroir. The climate, the soil, the topography, all that plays a role into the wine, plus obviously the growing season, right? I mean, we're in the farming business. It's never going to be the same, but that's the great fun about it. It's no vintage is ever the same, even in Napa.
It's amplified in Napa Valley too because of all the different microclimates and the different micro terroirs as well. So I totally agree with everything René just said. At the end of the day, it's farming. The vintage variation is amazing because you have variations in farming, but at the same time, you know, we source from vineyards that are throughout the different terroirs of Napa Valley.
Yeah.
So, you know, what's great is the hillside in 2014 is different than the Napa Valley floor in 2014, which is different than in 15 and 16 and 13 and all these things. And it's how they all come together and they work together. And I feel like for Merryvale, you know, we have a common philosophy and an idea about, you know, vine balance and wine tension and balance and freshness. And so every year, the level of quality is going to maintain the same. However, you'll be able to really taste the vintage variation and really appreciate the differences and the subtleties in that terroir.
Yeah. Really have the ability to choose some of the best lots from every vintage, be it Valley Floor Vineyard or mountain fruit, like is the case for our estate vineyards. So it makes for a nice balance in the wines. You know, the Valley Floor wines tend to be, generally speaking, a little bit maybe more opulent, and the mountain fruit a little bit bigger wines. You typically have to manage the tannins so they're not overbearing. But here in this case also we have some wines that have a little bit of age. So that helps soften the tannins as well. So
completely, I think all these wines really exhibit great finesse as well as power and balance, elegance for sure.
So we certainly hope that you enjoy those wines in the comfort of your home, and don't forget to come and visit us once we're able to open up again. Beautiful place here, be it at Merryvale at the winery in the tasting room where we are now, or on the terrace, or at one of our parties at the estate vineyards. So thank you for watching, and cheers.
Cheers.